promise. So, alrighty, well, so we got our exercise in, we got our food, digesting, and so why are we all here? I have no idea. So let's just wrap it up. Let's just all go home, right? Of course not. So thank you, Bentley Hearing, for inviting me. This is my second time being here. Was anyone here like about a year and a half, 2 years ago when I spoke before? Okay, well, very good. Then I can use the same material then. Just kidding. I promise you I will give some very relevant information in regards to preventing cognitive decline and dementia. And it's awesome to know that really most everyone here is already a patient of Bentley Hearing and is already treating their hearing loss, because that is by far the most modifiable risk factor. So if you are already addressing your hearing loss, give yourself a round of applause, a pat on the back, whatever you want to say, because you are working truly with one of the best private practice organizations when it comes to treating hearing loss and tinnitus on the planet. And I mean that sincerely, so I hope you feel the same way. All right. So my name is Kevin Weston. I am the Director of Prevention Decline, as Dr. Bentley mentioned. We're going to be talking about not so much 14 modifiable risk factors. We're going to try to break that down into 5 lifestyle habits. Because if you had to memorize something and remember something, would you rather remember 5 things or 14 things? Okay, that's a rhetorical question, so hopefully we get that. But for those of you that do not know, I do not live here in London. I do not live here in Ontario, Canada. I live in southern Utah in the US. And this is my family. So we have lived in southern Utah for 15 years. My oldest just turned 15, and guess what? She still likes me. At least that's what she tells to my face. And I have a 13-year-old. My son just turned 10, and my youngest is 8. And the best part about my family is all 4 of them look like my wife. And so it makes it so life is easy and that they have higher hopes than what their father had. So my background is in exercise physiology and health coaching. That's what I got my master's degree in. And I have been in the preventative health space since 2004, working primarily with the mid-older adult population. And I love working with this demographic because, quite frankly, they have lots of experiences. They can see through the nonsense that sometimes a lot of health and fitness people can spit out. And they understand that when it comes to the aging process, aging is not for sissies, right? And there's a lot of things that we can't do about aging. Has anyone figured out how to stop having birthdays? Okay, me neither. However, what we do know is that there are multiple modifiable risk factors to slowing down decline. I know the company I work for is called Preventing Decline, but Father Time is undefeated, right? We can all admit that. We don't know when our expiration date is. However, the quality of your life, the way that you envision the next 5, 10, how many amount of years you're going to be on this planet, you want to be years of vibrancy, independence, and living the life that you envision for yourself, okay? And that is multifaceted, and that's why we're going to talk about the different components to slowing the aging process as best as we can, understanding the realm that we're just trying to slow the aging process, okay? Does that sound like a plan? Are we ready? Are we locked and loaded and ready to go? Okay, let's see if I can get my clicker to work. There you go. So really quick, I have a question for all of you. I know you get to do some jazzercise, you get free food, but other than those great reasons for being here, just by a couple of people, why did you come today? What was it about the topic that motivated you to drive through London and come to this facility to hear this presentation? Anyone have a motivation other than the free food?
Understanding cognitive health.
Understanding cognitive health. I saw one more hand back there.
I just wanted to build the habits that I could start to use that I haven't been using to
Okay.
help the decline.
Awesome. So how can you improve on habits and what those habits are to preventing decline? Okay. One more right here.
My father had dementia when he died, and I can't remember why. It's hereditary.
Okay. Well, you and me, my friend, we have a lot in common because this picture right here, this is my grandpa Willis Jenkins. And this is my grandmother, this is my mom, this is my sister, my brother, my other sister, and this little punk kid right here in the green shirt, that is me. Okay? So Grandpa Jenkins was an incredible grandfather, super vibrant, like happy-go-lucky, always spending time with us, with my siblings and I mean, just your all-the-kind grandfather. And I remember in 1999, I was a sophomore in high school, and my mom saying the words, Grandpa got diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And me being, 16 years old or so, wondering like, Alzheimer's, like, what is that? And my mom explained to me, well, it has to deal with the brain, and you're just gonna be seeing some changes in Grandpa, over the coming years. Well, she used years, but I would argue within the next probably 6 to 9 months, we were seeing changes to where he didn't recognize who I was anymore, my siblings. About a year after, he didn't know who my mother was. And then it was about 2 years from the time that he was diagnosed before he passed away. So that's on my mother's side. And then on my dad's side, my father, he came to St. George to come visit us, and he was kind of having some health issues, and we took him to the hospital for some various health things that were going on. And lo and behold, they did a brain scan and said, oh, by the way, your dad has vascular dementia. And so now my wife is completely freaked out because she's thinking, oh, great, you have it on both sides of the gene pool. You have it on your mom's side and your dad's side. When we first learned about this, she kind of looked at this whole situation as, Kevin, you are a ticking time bomb. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when that this is going to happen. And I talk about this for a living. I read the literature, as part of my job, right? And let's say, for example, let's say it's true. Let's say it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when I'm going to get serious, not just mild cognitive decline. Let's say it's in the gene pool, it's embedded, it's going to happen as much as I was going to lose my hair in my late 20s, right? Does that just mean we just curl up in a ball and just say, well, I just lost the genetic lottery and that's that? And so I'm telling you, if you get anything out of today's presentation, it's this. It's not too early, it's not too late to slow the aging process and to prevent or delay cognitive decline. And I'm going to show you the research that kind of reinforces those statements, okay? Because ultimately, well, I'm going to skip this one. Let's just get right to the heart of it. Because according to the Mayo Clinic, dementia usually involves memory loss, and it's one of the earlier symptoms that something is amiss, okay? But how many of you, you're looking for your car keys, or you walk into a room and you said, okay, why did I come in here? And then you kind of walk backwards out of the room, and that's why I came in here then, okay? Does that mean that you have dementia? Okay, you're correct. That does not mean you have dementia. That just means you are an imperfect human being with lots of things going through your mind and lots of things that are happening, right? However, if you finally did locate your car keys and you picked them up and you dangled them and you said, okay, here they are. Now what are these keys for? Okay, then that's a different discussion, right? And so if you are forgetful, if you sometimes misplace things, do not overly concern yourself like, oh my gosh, that means I have dementia, that means I'm gonna get Alzheimer's disease, you kind of let your mind like go racing. There is a process to how these things are diagnosed and assessed. I'm not a neurologist, and so if you're looking for that type of information, I will not be able to tell you that specifically. However, what I can tell you is that dementia is an umbrella term, and you have different types of dementia, but the most common form is Alzheimer's disease, which is what we're going to primarily focus on, because, quite frankly, because it's becoming more and more prevalent in our society today, and as a healthcare system, we really don't know exactly what we're going to do about it. And so what we know is that there has to be some form of personal ownership on helping to do all that you can at a personal level to help reduce your risk as much as we can. I'm going to show you how to do that. So how does Alzheimer's disease develop over the brain? It's primarily the buildup of these two types of proteins. One is called amyloid beta, okay, that can form clumps or plaques in the vessels of the brain, as well as another protein called tau, which basically they form these tangles, and these tangles, when they form, it causes the neurons to eventually deteriorate and die. And so whether you like it or not, this is happening in real time as we speak, because the number one risk factor to Alzheimer's disease is age. And so that is what we call a non-modifiable risk factor. So that's why I don't talk about it, because you can't do anything about it, so why even give it the light of day? We just know that's truly the biggest risk factor is how many birthdays you've had. By the numbers, this is according to the World Health Organization, so this isn't just in Canada and the US, this is looking at the entire globe. But in about 4 or 5 years, worldwide there will be 78 million people that will develop dementia. And then 20 years after that, that number is going to almost double to close to 140 million. And some of that is because of the aging population, okay? So it's just from sheer numbers. But even if you break it down per capita, break it down towards individual generations, that is still a much higher number than what we would like. And a lot of this is multiple risk factors, genetics, lifestyle, untreated hearing loss. There's a lot of things that are kind of baked into this cake of why we see these rising numbers. But what I can tell you is in 2026, right now, our number one weapon, our number one tool to fight against this disease is prevention. It just is, right? They'll always come out with new pharmaceutical drugs, new ways to try to treat symptoms, but truly, you talk to any brain scientist, neuroscientist, neurologist that really knows the research, and they will tell you it is much easier to keep the toothpaste in the tube than it is to let it out and then try to bring it back. Because once a diagnosis has happened, then you're just having a different conversation of how do you slow its progression. Okay, does that make sense? Are we all on the same page? All right. So in 2024, this is called the Lancet Commission on Dementia Prevention. About every 4 to 5 years, they come out with new research. So in 2017, they had 10 modifiable risk factors. In 2020, they had 12 modifiable risk factors. And then most recently in 2024, they increased that to 14 modifiable risk factors. And I have great news for you. If you cannot see this, I'm going to read it to you, and it's inside the workbook that everyone's going to be given. So don't feel like, hey, Kevin, what's this say right here at the very bottom? Don't worry. I promise you it's in the workbook. But these modifiable risk factors list anywhere from the medical treatment of hearing loss to reducing your LDL cholesterol, increasing social engagement, increasing your education, managing depression, reducing your risk of a traumatic brain injury, aka please don't fall, air pollution, increase your physical activity, manage diabetes, stop smoking, reduce high blood pressure, treat your vision loss, reduce obesity, and drink less alcohol. Okay? Can anyone repeat all those back to me? Anyone? Anyone repeat those back? Does anyone remember number 12 of 14? Number 10? No? Okay, me neither. And I do this for a living. And I say, Kevin, name all 14. I think if I really focus, I can remember it. And so if I can't remember 14 things, how am I expecting people that I talk to remember 14 things? So, here's what we got. You're probably wondering, you keep on hearing this term, preventing decline, and this partnership with Bentley Hearing. What is preventing decline? One, the best news about this whole process is everything I'm going to be talking to you about today is included as part of your treatment plan. If you are a patient of Bentley Hearing, this is part of your treatment plan. And I would make the argument it should be ironclad into your treatment plan. If we're going to start talking about hearing loss and then cognitive care, we have to address as many of these modifiable risk factors as possible. We can't just say, well, we did 7% of these 45% risk factors, so let's just call it a day and say, good for us. And so if we were to address as many of these risk factors as we can, all 14 of them, what they showed from the Lancet Commission, which was authored by 27 of the world's leading experts on dementia, if you were to address all of these, you could reduce your risk by almost half, 45%. But you can't just pick and choose. You can't just say, well, I'll do this, but not this. No, this is all about odds and statistics. What are you going to do to reduce your risk? Most people say, I do anything to reduce my risk. And I would say, but will you do anything? Okay? And we're trying to help people to address these as much as we can. So we partner with private practice hearing providers all across North America, including Bentley Hearing, because we know that the most modifiable risk factor to preventing cognitive decline is that big puzzle piece at the top of that previous screen, okay? The medical treatment of hearing loss and tinnitus. However, once we address the other modifiable risk factors, okay, that takes a little bit more of the conversation from just saying, okay, treat your hearing loss to now let's pay attention to your daily habits. How much activity do you get? What kind of food do you eat? How socially engaged are you? How much sleep and what's the quality of your sleep? How do you manage your stress? All these other things play a vital role in those other 13 modifiable risk factors. And so as part of your treatment plan, once you're in a good place, you're adhering to the recommendations that your hearing provider gives you, now we segue into step 2, which is lifestyle modification, which is what I do for a living. Okay? So, let's talk about these 5 habits, okay? So habit number 1, we can skip because you're already doing it. So congratulations again, you are addressing the most modifiable risk factor. But now let's talk a little bit about habit number 2, being part of a community and being socially engaged and connecting with other humans. I would make the argument that this plays such an important role in your ability to reduce your risk of cognitive decline. In fact, this was a study that was done in 2022 where they did a study in independent assisted living homes, and they found when they looked at residents that were socially engaged as compared to residents that were just staying within their units and in their apartments, what they found is that socially isolated older adults had a 27% higher chance of developing dementia than socially isolated older adults have a 27 higher chance of developing dementia than older adults who are not isolated. So if you learned anything from COVID and from those crazy years of quarantining, we are social creatures, we are designed to be connected and to have interactions with other human beings. And if you feel like that is something that you are not getting enough of, I highly encourage you to kind of look at opportunities and set goals And I can help you do this, right? This is part of your treatment plan to help you be more socially connected, okay? So, I like to look at these, I'm gonna keep on going to a screen like this because if you are being part of a community and you're addressing that social interaction, you obviously are gonna be addressing the 5% on the social engagement, as well as you're gonna help have less symptoms or help to better manage depression and anxiety type symptoms, which is another 3%. So those two added together is an 8% reduction in risk. So we're trying to find what are the habits that are going to kill as many birds with one stone. All right, lifestyle habit number 3, fueling your brain with nutrients. I love this quote from Ann Wigmore, who said, "The food you eat can either be the safest and most powerful form of medicine or the slowest form of poison." Now, I know some of us just got done eating a cookie and a brownie or whatever, and so I want to kind of give this little footnote, and that is one of the hardest things when working with patients and clients on the food aspect is they get in this mindset of, this means I need to eat perfect. And I say, no, I do this for a living, I have 4 kids, there's junk food in my pantry at my house as we speak. The goal is to eat as healthy as you know how, probably 10% more than what you're currently doing. So I'll ask a patient, how, on a percentage-wise, how healthy do you eat as healthy as you know how? Let's say they'll say 50-50. 50% of the time, I try to eat more vegetables and more lean protein, and the other 50%, I kind of eat whatever tastes good, whatever I'm in the mood for. I go, great. Our goal is to try to increase that by 10% and get to 60-40, and then eventually 70-30. But ultimately, it has to be client-driven. I never tell patients how to live their life. I never say, well, Mr. Jones, you need to be at 80-20, and we gotta start right now. That might sound great in theory until when you get to real life and real application, and then they don't actually do the thing that we set out to do, and then there's a little bit of the dealing with failure and that negative mindset, which we want to avoid at all costs, and give them a taste of success, give them a taste of momentum, and then kind of build from there, okay? So, when it comes to what is an evidence-based approach to brain healthy food, right now the research shows that a Mediterranean approach has the most longitudinal data behind it. And a simple way to look at this is if you can increase your diet with more leafy greens, bright colored fruits and vegetables, as well as lean protein, primarily protein that swims, okay? So things that have omega-3 fatty acids, fish, and if you're kind of like, oh, if you just heard the name fish and it kind of made you, gag inside, then I would look at other lean proteins, turkey, chicken, and if you're a vegetarian, then you just try and get as much plant-based proteins into your diet as you can. But from what we are showing, there's lots of diets and things out there, and people try to be dogmatic and try to, say, oh, this is the only way that you should eat. If I had to say there's 3 common threads to all this, it's 3 Ps, and that is, if you're being serious about your nutrition, it's gonna be produce, protein, portions. Okay, the portion size of what you eat. So I don't care what diet you're on, if you're at a caloric surplus, you will gain weight. If you're at a caloric deficit, you will lose weight. Now, what kind of weight you lose, that's another debate. But if you're at a caloric, equilibrium, then you will maintain your weight. Those are the facts of thermodynamics do not change. So this study showed that by following a Mediterranean approach may reduce your risk by up to 23%. So if you were to address this in terms of your nutrition, add those all together, would be a 13% reduction in risk. And I promise you at the very end, I'm gonna leave time for a Q&A. So if you're like, oh, go back to that screen or ask this question, I promise you there'll be an opportunity for us to review it. Now, you just got done doing some jazzercise. My background is exercise physiology. And so I'm gonna try and do this through a very non-biased lens. But I would have to say that this quote by Robert M. Butler, who said, if exercise could be packed in a pill, it would be the single most widely prescribed beneficial medicine in the nation. And I'm telling you, the reason why I went into exercise physiology is because exercise has its fingerprints on mental health, cognitive health, and physical health. There's no other intervention that's holistic that gives those types of dividends. But it can sometimes feel unpleasant, but it requires some buy-in, it requires us to get out of our seat and to move, right? But there's different ways that you can move that's completely appropriate based upon your situation, and as part of your treatment plan, I can help you figure that out. In fact, who'd like to do a little test right now? Is that okay? I know you did jazzercise, but I feel like this is the time I have to kind of wake everyone up a little bit. So, would most people be willing to do this? Okay, so what I'd like to do, if you do not have knee, lower back issues, or you have balance issues, just sit this one out, just hang out, it's okay. But if you're free of more orthopedic issues from the hips down, I would love for you to join, okay? So what this is part of it's called the Senior Fit Test that looks at lower body strength and its relationship to maintaining your independence, okay? So this is, I can put it on both tables, you'll be able to see it, but these are the standards for women, but men can do this as well. But between the ages of 16 and 64, 65 and 69, 70 and 74, 75 and 80, well, 79, 80 to 84, 85 to 89, 90 and older, okay? And how many chair stands can you do in 30 seconds? We still want to do this? Okay. And this is not to, boost your ego or crush your confidence. This is just to kind of give you an idea of this stuff matters and it's been tested. So for example, let's say someone was 72 years old, okay, and they did 15 chair stands in 30 seconds. What that shows us is these stars right here, this represents the criterion norm. This represents kind of the threshold of what you want to be at or above in order to stave off losing your independence during the late stages of life. And so, for example, if I had a client do this test, and let's say, so we'll take our 72-year-old, and let's say they did 12, and they're like, oh, Kevin, I didn't get up to 14. I say, great, let's incorporate some lower body strength into your daily activities and get your legs stronger so that in 6 months, we can do the same test again and get to 14. How's that sound? They say, great, what's it require? It requires some consistency. And so that's where the conversation goes. Okay, so we want to do this? I still feel like, oh my gosh. Where's Gabby? Do I have to bring jazzercise back up here to get a little bit more buy-in? Okay, do we want to do this? I will tell you, I promise, I will tell you. So here's the chair stand.
Let's go.
Okay. All right. No, you do not stand on the chair. So a sit to stand test. You're going to sit at the edge of your chair a little bit. You bring your arms across your chest. You stand up. You sit down. That's one. And you do that as many times as you can in 30 seconds. Under two conditions. One is when you stand up, you don't let your arms come off your chest. And when you sit down, okay, you don't let your feet leave the floor. You can't rock like this, okay? And like I said, if you do not want to do this, totally fine. But for those of you that are kind of curious, why not, okay? And it's 30 seconds. We can do this for 30 seconds, right? All right, does everyone understand? We good? Okay. All righty. We are going to start in 3, 2, 1, and go. Count in your head how many you've done. There's 10 seconds. Oh, we gotta get video of this. I forgot, man. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and done. Good. Okay. How was that for a good time, huh? Okay. All right. Now, normally when we do that test, it's required that you do that test in a 17-inch folding chair, which sits lower than these chairs that you're sitting on. But that's okay. That's okay. I didn't want to pop the bubble before you even started. I needed some buy-in to actually try it in the first place. So my apologies. I feel like I just told my kids, "Hey, we're going to Disneyland." Just kidding. All right. So if you are being consistent with moving into your life, you're literally helping to produce new brain cells. You are increasing blood flow to the brain. You're also releasing neurotransmitters. So when you're doing that, when you're doing jazzercise or when you're doing that chair stand test, you're literally releasing serotonin, dopamine, and adrenaline into the bloodstream, which are feel-good hormones. That's the reason why when you finished, everyone was more talkative. The frowns turned upside down. They were smiling again. Your body is designed to move. I promise you that. All right, so if you're doing that, you're going to increase your risk by up to 17%. So 6 of these 14 modifiable risk factors if you're being consistent with increasing more physical activity into your daily habits. And last but not least, habit number 5, making recovery and wellness a priority, which is primarily dealing with your sleep habits and how you manage your stress. I love this quote that says, "It's not the load that breaks you down, it's the way you carry it." Okay? So let's talk specifically about sleep for a moment. So this is a topic that I have all the time with patients and clients where, like, "Kevin, I have sleep apnea. Kevin, I have to get up 3 or 4 or 5 times to go to the bathroom every night. So how in the world do I have a chance of getting quality sleep?" And I say, I know there are challenges. So I ask you the question, tell me a little bit about your nighttime habits, what we call your sleep hygiene. And we would try to find little opportunities to, once again, we don't just fix sleep overnight because we did one thing. And usually, just like any other habit, we have to incorporate these little tiny behaviors on a consistent basis that feels sustainable so that we can help someone that says, "Okay, I probably sleep maybe 5 hours a night. Okay, let's see if we can increase that to 5.5 and then to 6. Okay, I know everyone knows everyone should get at least 7 to 8, some people say 8.5 hours a night, and you might think, well, I only get 5.5 hours a night, so I must be up a creek. And what we're trying to do is don't let that be a deterrent to not even try in the first place. Because for every half hour of either longer duration or deeper levels of sleep, okay, I promise you will pay big dividends in terms of reducing your risk of cognitive decline, as well as having more energy and feeling better throughout the day when you are awake. In fact, in your brain right now, when you go to sleep, you have what we call these glial cells. They are the cleaners of your brain. So when you are getting more sleep, they're like the janitors that go in and help clean out the metabolic debris that collects as you are awake. And so some of that metabolic debris is that amyloid beta protein that we talked about at the very beginning of the presentation. And so when you have more consistent restful sleep, you're giving these glial cells time to actually do their job. If you're chronically sleep deprived, okay, then it just makes it harder for the natural processes of the body to kind of do its thing, okay? And I know people take sleeping aids and other pharmaceutical approaches, which I would say work with your doctor. I'm not here to tell someone to start or stop medications, but I am saying that when it comes to your relationship with your doctor, you are your own best advocate. And when you're more educated on a particular topic, you'll be able to have better conversations with your doctor on whatever it is that you're trying to improve. All right. Also, throughout the day, take a deep breath. This was a study that showed that when it came to highly stressed caregivers, so people that were working in hospital settings and areas where they, it's very high strung, lots of tension, when they were making a priority to take 12 minutes a day, not just 12 minutes consecutively, but 12 minutes in accumulation throughout the day to just take a deep breath, what they found is that these people were at a lower risk of developing cognitive decline in their later years. So all this stuff matters, I promise. And if you do that, add those up together, an 8% reduction. So we're getting as many of these 14 modifiable risk factors by doing those 5 habits. So the question is, who can repeat the 5 habits? Number 1, you're already doing it. Hearing, yes. Thank you, Bentley Hearing, for being amazing hearing providers. Number 2, community. I heard it somewhere in the back. Community. Okay, number 3. Your food. Okay? And it can be in any order. I'm just toying with you. Okay, number 4. I heard it already. Exercise. And number 5. Sleep, stress management. I kind of put it under a recovery, wellness bucket. Okay? All right. But here's the challenge. Everyone is going to get a copy of this workbook. It's called the Empower Change Workbook. Because how many of you were surprised by those 5 habits? How many of you were like, holy smokes, Kevin? You mean what I eat matters to my brain health? Are you telling me that getting more sleep is good for my brain? You're telling me exercise is good for my cognitive health? How many of you were surprised? Nobody, right? We know this. But how many of you have said this before? Kevin, I already know what I need to do. I just don't do it. Does that feel relatable? Okay. This is why you are working with a forward-thinking, proactive hearing providers that see you as more than just a pair of ears. They see you as whole people with your own lives, your own challenges, and they want to help you address not just your hearing, but all modifiable risk factors. And like I mentioned before, it's included, okay? The best part about my job is I never have to talk to them about money. I never have to be like, well, for the low price of, you can get, no. It just makes it so that I can just focus on the care and help people to help themselves. But unfortunately, I can't do it for you, right? Your hearing providers cannot wear your devices in your behalf, right? It has to be a conscious decision of, I want to live the life that I deem best for me, and to do so on your terms. But there's multiple ways to go about that. And one of the ways that we do this is we use what we call the brain care score. So if you open up that workbook, if you pull it out, let's see, how we got time? Okay, we got time. So on page 11, on the Empower Change workbook, the lady that's holding the weight out in front of her, if you go to page 11, you should see a sheet that looks just like this. And we're going to educate everyone. We're going to educate the patients as well as the providers. So I'm trying to be efficient here. So as you look at this page, These are broken down into 3 domains. You have your physical, which is kind of like your health metrics. You have lifestyle, and then you have social, emotional, okay? So this is our made-up patient named Jane Doe. Oh, did I say page? Okay, sorry, page 11 is the worksheet. Okay, page, my fault. Man, who wrote this book? You should know his material. Okay, on page 7, I'll just, I said 7. You guys just are hearing it incorrectly. It's not background noise. 7, 11. Okay, on page 7, everyone there? Okay. If you do not know these first 4 questions, okay, know them, okay? But I'll give you a little cheat sheet. So if you have ever been told, so let's look at blood pressure. If you've ever been told that you have high blood pressure or that you're pre-hypertensive, that would either score you a 0 if you have high blood pressure, regardless if you're being treated for it or not. If you're pre-hypertensive, you'd be a 2. If you don't have high blood pressure, you'd be a 3. Same thing with the blood sugar. If you do not know your A1C, if you have been told that you're a type 2 diabetic, not a type 1, but a type 2 diabetic, you'd be a 0. If you're pre-diabetic, you'd be a 1. If you do not have a diabetes, type 1 diabetes, and your A1C is under 5.7, you'd be a 2. Same thing with cholesterol, but this is looking at LDL cholesterol specifically, okay? You'd be either a 0 or a 1, BMI or your body mass index, looking at your weight. If you do not know what your BMI is, you can just go on your phone or online, go to a BMI calculator, put in your gender, your height and weight, and it will give you a number, and then you can fill it out from there. You do the same thing looking at nutrition, alcohol, smoking, aerobic activities, your sleep, your stress, your social relationships, as well as life meaning. So there's 12 questions on the brain care score. And so as you put your score on this side, okay, then you add up those numbers to get a total brain care score at the bottom. That can range anywhere from 0 to 21 points. Okay? And here's why we use the brain care score. I did not come up with it. Researchers from Massachusetts General Hospital followed 400,000 people for 12 and a half years that were between the ages of 50 and 70, okay? And they put all this money, all this research into helping the average person look at their brain care through a holistic lens of what can I do to protect my cognitive health without a prescription, with no side effects, looking at encouraging people to make lifestyle changes. So based upon when you take this, you want to be as close to 21 points as you can. Okay, the higher your score, the lower your risk. So let's say, for example, here's our Jane Doe. She scored 16 out of 21 points. Okay? So if she was a patient that I was working with, I would say, okay, Jane, so here's our opportunities to improve. We could look at your blood pressure. We could look at, let's see what else. She doesn't smoke. We could look at your sleep. We could look at exercise. We could look at your social relationships. So I'm kind of naming off what are those 5 missing points that she's missing. And I say, okay, Jane, what, out of those 5 things that I listed, what's most important to you? And then she talks. And then I ask questions. I get her to talk more. But ultimately, I am trying to get the patient to think about their own life, to have their own self-reflection of what this change looked like for me. Because what I do is different than what you do, is different from everyone else. I promise you there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to healthy living. If anyone tells you that there is, they're trying to sell you something, okay? I know with Prevent and Decline, it's not sexy, it's not like, oh, just do this one thing and we'll solve the aging dilemma across the world. It's not that simple. It takes health coaching, and that's what health coaching is putting patients and clients in the driver's seat of their own lives, okay? And health coaches just sit as a co-pilot. We help ask questions, we help provide recommendations if needed, we provide encouragement, accountability, support, but we can't do it for you. If we could, I would not be here. I'd be a multi-billionaire living in Malibu on a beach house looking over the ocean, okay? But do you believe people can change? Do you believe that with the right template and with the right system, that you can truly change your life for the better? It's either you believe it or you don't. If you believe it and you feel like, yes, if I just make some changes, I can improve my health outcomes, please use this resource. If you're kind of like, it is what it is, I really don't care, I still hope you use the resource and that we plant the seed and maybe at a future date, you'll feel differently. But I'm telling you, I see it like all the time, like 100 times every year, where you see a patient that goes from, I can't, to, wait, I changed this, and now I got some momentum, and then I changed this. I went from my brain care score from a 16 to a 17, 17 to an 18, 18 to 19, and so forth. Because for every, do I have that slide on here? For every 5 points that we increase your brain care score, this is what the research showed. We decrease the risk of a stroke by 30%. We decrease their risk of late life depression by 35%, and we reduce their risk of dementia by 18%. Okay? No side effects, no drugs. It's just sick and tired of being sick and tired and chipping away at it. And all this is included as part of your treatment plan. There's no, it's all laid out for you. It's just a matter of if you want to take advantage of it. So this, you could go online and pay for this out of pocket, right? So I have people that aren't hearing patients that pay us $40 a month or $400 a year for these services. Bentley Hearing covers all that cost and gives it to you for free because it's baked into your treatment plan. All right, so I'm hoping that everyone here has felt like the itch of, I know I can take better control of my health outcomes. It's just a matter of finding out the next steps. So the next step right now is to take the brain care score, know what your numbers are, okay? And then, as you go through the workbook, if you read the introduction to the workbook, it will kind of tie this all together, okay? And then if you do lesson 1 of the workbook, that helps to kind of start the identifying your why. If you are going to go down this journey of improving your health outcomes, okay, we have to kind of plan for things. You can't just spitball it, okay? Things take time, and there will be some ups and downs along the way. But just like anything else in life, our trajectory is never linear. It's always kind of a little bit low and up and high, okay? And you can do that same thing with your health behaviors and truly move the needle to preventing cognitive decline in dementia. I promise you that. So thank you so much for your time. It's been my pleasure. Any questions that I can answer before I get off the stage?